oral questions by members.
Member for Delta South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the historic Dinsdale Farm in Cowichan Bay has grown tremendous agricultural crops for over 100 years. Nature Trust of BC, the current landowner, recently announced plans to breach the dike and flood this pristine farmland with tidal seawater. Last year, the Ministry of Water, Land and Resource Stewardship actually applied to the Agricultural Land Commission promoting the destruction of this farmland. And today, Mr. Speaker, Donald Trump has made BC food more expensive. Will the Premier do what's right and nullify this plan to breach the dike and flood this 150 acres of valuable farmland with seawater?
Minister of Agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's so nice to be able to get up and talk about agriculture, especially on a day when we see tariffs coming in and threatening our food security, our sovereignty, and there's never been a better moment to support BC agriculture. I've been out and about in communities, and there's a real buzz about buying BC. I have so much faith in our consumers as we look forward and become more resilient in every way in this province. To the member's question, I know that he's a real champion for agriculture, as myself, and I know that he's quite concerned around the impending plans to flood some agricultural land in the Cowichan Valley. There's been a lot of thought that's been done around the values of returning this area into a natural ecosystem. I think the member will know that to have healthy agriculture, you also have to have a healthy ecosystem surrounding it. And so when we think about the ecosystem that supports fish and the natural biodiversity of this land, a decision was made that for the greater good, this would be returned to an ecosystem.
Member for Prince George Valemount.
Last Saturday, the Prince George Regional Highway Rescue Society was called out to a vehicle rollover on Highway 16 East. The vehicle damage was significant and the driver was crushed inside. Using very specialized equipment and training, the volunteers from the Rescue Society were able to respectfully extricate the individual. The recovery operation and scene cleanup took over 6 hours. I'm sure this government would agree that the specialized equipment, training, and service these tireless and brave volunteers offered to my region is invaluable. Yesterday, I learned that this Regional Highway Rescue Society has not yet received their gaming grant. They are at a critical point of survival. Will this government ensure they receive the essential funding they require?
Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I thank the member for her question and her care for her community. Gaming grants are essential. They support so many nonprofit organizations across this province. That's why we've dedicated over $140 million to support gaming grants, because they do valuable work like the member references. I can get back to her with specific details around the question that she has asked around that organization. I don't have that in front of me now, but I can tell her that in 24-25, for example, the government supported the Bulkley Valley Stikine Kitwanga Community Association to the tune of $250,000, for example, and that was to help them with their emergency services facility, accommodate an ambulance, fire bay with fire protection pumper truck, including crew quarters and community access for community paramedic, for example. But if the member wants to follow up with me around specific details and the timing, I'm happy to hear from her, and I'll get her the information as best as I can. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Member for Fraser-Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, Sunday night, the Nicola Valley Hospital experienced its 6th closure in the last month. The people of Merritt, and especially the mayor, are fed up. When I spoke to the mayor Sunday evening, he was ready to call a state of emergency. This government knows that he has sent a bill to the Premier to cover the cost of 23 different closures at Nicola Valley General Hospital in 2023. The total cost that the City of Merritt is looking to be reimbursed for is over $103,000 for services rendered during these closures. The Mayor has asked me to see if I can stop by the Minister's office and pick up a check today for him, or should I just tell him that the check is in the mail?
Minister of Health.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. I too had the opportunity to speak to the Mayor on Sunday night, and we had a long conversation about the impacts to the community and what it feels like to be a member of the Merritt community in the greater region when the emergency room has to be diverted. I believe there's an understanding that with a global healthcare worker shortage, it has been challenging to recruit and train physicians and nurses so we have sufficient staffing to keep the emergency room open all the time, which is what people depend on. And I know that. Mr. Speaker, that's why this government has doubled down on the work that we are doing to train doctors here in British Columbia, to recruit more healthcare workers into regional communities, into smaller communities, places like Merritt, which are fantastic places to live. I know that the Mayor of Merritt is dedicated to that work too. I know that he supports the healthcare workers in that hospital, as do we. And Mr. Speaker, we're not going to stop this work. We're going to continue so that we build the capacity in the healthcare system at this time too, strengthening healthcare for British Columbians, because that's what we all depend on. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
West Vancouver Capilano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The school district of Surrey is facing a $16 million shortfall. As a result, the district is looking to make more budget cuts with learning centres, education programs and school busing. The government says that it is the district's problem, but the reality is it is this government's fault for not funding education to keep pace with inflation and population growth. To the Minister of Education, will she step in to cover the funding gap in the Surrey School District? Yes or no?
Minister of Education.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I want to thank the member for the question. I hear the concern in her voice to ensure that students in her community are receiving all the resources and supports they need to thrive. And we in this government share that concern, which is why year over year our government has continued to invest in education. The Surrey School District in 2017 had a budget of $641 million. Honourable Speaker, last year the Surrey School District's budget was $1.03 billion. We're going to continue to invest in education. Decisions around...
Please continue.
Thank you, Speaker. Decisions around programming are made at the school district level. I know the member knows that. And I know that the Surrey School District will work with the community to ensure they're putting a budget forward.
Member for Surrey Cloverdale, please. Member. Minister will conclude.
Thanks. That the school district will work with the community to put a budget forward that meets the community's needs, and will continue to invest in education. Thank you.
Members. Leader of the third party.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. As has already been pointed out in this House in our 2 short weeks together, we measure what we value. In BC, our official measures of economic progress are inadequate and incomplete. A focus only on gross domestic product as the dominant metric of economic health has skewed our view of what really matters. GDP favors short-term wealth creation and consumption over long-term wealth generation, sustainability, and intergenerational fairness. GDP goes up with every car crash, oil spill, and purchase of bottled water, but not when we protect our watersheds. We wouldn't accept this single-minded measure of success in any other aspect of our lives. As a rookie on Budget Day, I was hesitant to ask the Minister of Finance a question on a busy and challenging day, so my question is to the Executive Council. Does the government have the tools in place to evaluate outcomes from this afternoon's budget using a broad set of well-being indicators that matter to British Columbians?
Minister of Jobs and Economic Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Member Opposite, for the question. Our government has a robust set of programs and services that are supporting communities and well-being on the ground, and we're really monitoring the well-being through a series, and I know that even our poverty reduction strategy report was tabled yesterday, continuing to ensure that we're supporting British Columbians through what is currently, Mr. Speaker, a very difficult time, and it's going to be more difficult. And we've been working to ensure affordability is tackled with programs across a bunch of different ministries to ensure we're tackling affordability for families, for affordability for businesses, supporting our economies to thrive as we tackle this challenge with our strengthen, respond, and diversify strategy in this tariff moment.
Member supplemental.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Thank you to the Minister for the answer. We need better tools that measure the success of these programs and services and measure the fulfillment and well-being of our people, the long-term impacts of our spending decisions, and whether our communities are becoming safer and more resilient. We need to look beyond short-term politics and focus on building a thriving British Columbia. Countries around the world are adopting indices of well-being that measure economic income, plus a full suite of indicators such as the environment, culture, safety, recreation, health, and education. The upheaval of today's tariffs is an opportunity for the province to develop a Made in BC Wellbeing Index. My question, again to the government, will they work with this House to establish a wellbeing framework tailor-made for British Columbia?
Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you, Member Opposite. In this moment, we know our communities and our businesses and our workers are being impacted. And I appreciate the Member Opposite's question around meeting this moment while we're really taking care to see what's happening on the ground in our communities. That's why our government has set up the Business Task Force. That's why we have the poverty reduction strategy metrics having been tabled yesterday. That's why our ministry is listening to and engaging with businesses. I've been meeting, Mr. Speaker, with businesses across the community, with local governments, with Indigenous communities and industry associations, so that we can engage through this crisis to ensure we're supporting British Columbians, protecting jobs, protecting our communities, continuing to monitor our outcomes so that we're doing the best we can together to support our communities through this crisis.
Member for Richmond Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Richmond Centre is missing 2 elementary schools. Residents and the school board have been begging this government to approve the construction of the much-needed schools for years. The situation will only get worse as thousands of new homes are set to be built in the area over the next few years. Over 600 students are crammed into modular portables, and they only get 40 minutes of gym time per week. That's even less than the students in Hong Kong, a city with a population density 1,200 times that of BC. Mr. Speaker, is the Minister of Education going to step up and promise the people of Richmond now, or should I wait until my grandkids are born?
Minister of Infrastructure.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. It is my pleasure to be able to rise on my first question in this House under this new portfolio, the Ministry of Infrastructure. We were created as a new ministry at a time when government is actively implementing the single largest capital infrastructure program in BC history. Through tens of billions of dollars in capital investment, this has led to 30 hospitals, 11 long-term care homes, 4 cancer centers, 226 school projects, including those in the city of Richmond. For instance, in the city of Richmond, where the member has hailed from, we have, in terms of schools, the R.C. Tilney Elementary School, the F.A. Thompson Elementary School, John G. Diefenbaker Elementary School, Howard DeBeck Elementary School, Alfred B. Dixon Elementary School. These are projects that are complete or underway. We know that the city of Richmond is growing. We will continue to work with them to ensure that we continue this good work that we have already underway.
Member for West Kelowna Peachland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under this NDP government, violent crime is spreading across British Columbia.
In Abbotsford, 2 stores, Shoppers Drug Mart and Real Canadian Superstore, are requiring staff to wear body cameras in response to violent crime. They were forced to take this action because this government turns a blind eye to repeat offenders. When will this government crack down on violent crime before body cams are in every store across British Columbia?
Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite for the question. I think it's important that we put in context some of the criminal activity that is occurring across the province. This is not a new trend. This, as in this case, is isolated. These cases are isolated to specific incidents, to specific people. I'm proud that we've supported the police to have target teams to target offenders like this, and that is something that we will continue.
Member for Surrey North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A Surrey community and our community is sending you birthday wishes. Happy birthday once again. And also they send one question. 25% of people who use Surrey food banks have a full-time job, 25%. Does the Premier think this is acceptable?
Member of Social Development. Minister, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The member's quite right. This is that anybody is food insecure in a country and a province as prosperous as this is something that we've been working very hard to overcome. We brought in a plan to tackle poverty, and we have been lifting tens of thousands of people out by investments like increasing the minimum wage, increasing income assistance rates, investing in childcare, investing in affordable housing. And when people don't have enough food, we also invested, and with great thanks to the partners that helped us deliver this, $50 million in emergency funding. Thank you to Food Banks BC and United Way BC that were able not only to help partners like the Surrey Food Bank with emergency food funding. I'm not sure if the members actually want to hear the answer. Yeah.
Members, Minister will conclude.
Surrey Food Bank has received, through funding from my ministry, both support with emergency food purchasing so that they can meet the need, but also infrastructure. In the case of Surrey Food Bank, a refrigerated delivery truck so that they're able to collect food from corporate donors and bring them to people. We're going to continue to do this work, willing to work with the member opposite to bring the supports his community needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Member for Surrey South.
Mr. Speaker, this is staggering. Food bank usage in the province has doubled under this NDP government. 225,000 visits in 1 month. That's the equivalent of everyone in South Surrey needing food bank assistance twice every month. How can the Premier justify letting so many British Columbians fall behind?
Minister of Social Development and Poverty Reduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We all want people to have access to nutritious, healthy, affordable food, and this is a challenge that people don't across the entire continent. The impact of global inflation and extremely high prices for food that have risen everywhere are not things that our government can prevent, but we can help people in their time of need. That's why between the Minister of Agriculture and myself, $200 million in food supports for food security. That is investment to farmers, to growing more food, and through my ministry, a portion of that has gone directly to emergency food serving organizations. We are helping food-serving organizations with both food infrastructure and direct help, and we're grateful to the partners and the charitable groups that help deliver help to people in their time of need.
Member for Surrey Serpentine River.
Honourable Speaker, the Minister of Housing and Municipal Affairs has trouble in his own house. After Oak Bay rejected a development, this minister responded by forcing an advisor on them. The problem the Oak Bay project rejected was the minister's own brother's project. That is a clear conflict of interest. When will the Premier call for a full investigation into this housing minister using government authority to enrich his family?
Minister of Housing.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Well, to start with, the member is false, and the member would never say that in the hallway because she knows that there would be a lawsuit on her hands. Now, Honourable Speaker, it's important to note that housing is the responsibility of all local governments. We need to ensure that all local governments are doing their part. In the case of Oak Bay, it's clear that they haven't been reaching their housing targets. We need to ensure...
Members. Minister.
Again, the member from Surrey has got some comments. I welcome her to make them outside in the hallway. These allegations are 100% false. In fact, if the member has something, I challenge them to take it to the Conflict Commissioner. They won't, because they know nothing's there, Honourable Speaker. Now, it's important, Honourable Speaker. Now, Honourable Speaker, the problem we have is a lack of housing. We need to ensure all communities are doing their part. It is frustrating for communities when they are making difficult decisions to approve housing to have a neighbouring community not doing their part, Honourable Speaker. If we're in this together, if we're all of us are in this together, everyone has to do a little bit so that one community doesn't have to do a lot. We're going to continue to do our work with Oak Bay. We're going to have to continue to do our work with West Vancouver, as well as all communities across British Columbia.
Member for Richmond Queensborough.
Mr. Speaker, Richmond residents near the Alderbridge Temporary Modular Housing Site are living in fear, dealing with open drug use, discarded needles, and harassment. Families, seniors, and children no longer feel safe in their own neighborhood. A local resident summed it up, quote, "We are seeing crack pipes, needles, drug use right in front of our homes." Will the Premier admit that his low-barrier housing policies are failing communities and putting public safety at risk?
Minister of Housing.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And I'll say this, I've said this many times in this House, I'll say it again. Demonizing vulnerable people, sure, and it gives you a couple of political points for the day, Honourable Speaker. It may make you feel good today, Honourable Speaker, but it will not solve the challenges that people are facing in their communities. Now, I've heard members on both sides of this House talk about the importance of supporting people who are vulnerable, supporting people who have issues around addiction, around mental health, Honourable Speaker. It's vitally important, Honourable Speaker, to address any of those major challenges that you have to have a roof over people's heads. The problem here is not homeless people. The problem here is lack of housing, Honourable Speaker. We need to approve more housing, all types of housing. It's the only way we're going to address this major challenge that we have. Now, in Richmond, we know there's a need for more supportive housing. We have the stats. They show us that over 40% increase in homelessness in that community. And the people are not coming from elsewhere. There are people in the community. I know there's good people on both sides of the House that want to address this. Those of you that want to address it, I'm happy to work with you. I'm happy to work with the Richmond Council as well, because we need to find solutions. We can't leave people out in encampments. We can't let them sleeping in front of businesses. That is not good for the people living there. It's not safe for the community at large. So we're going to continue that work in Richmond and communities around the province.
Member for North Island.
The Port Hardy Hospital ER has been closing at 5 p.m. for over 2 years. I used to work at that hospital as a doctor when it was open 24/7. Recently, an 8-year-old child with severe asthma was diverted to from Port Hardy to Port McNeill and fortunately survived. Others weren't as lucky. To the Minister of Health, you are ultimately responsible for the failure of Island Health's CEO and 9 vice presidents. When will you make them accountable and hire people who can get the job done?
All question through the chair member. Minister of Health.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question and for raising her concerns for Port Hardy and for all of the hospitals that have experienced these kinds of diversions. And of course, this is absolutely not what any community wants to see, because we want to know that the emergency room is there, that healthcare services are there for us when they are needed, where they are needed, Mr. Speaker. That's why we're going to continue to take the action that we are, working together with health authorities who have the best interests of all community members at heart and are doing everything that they can, working with the healthcare workforce to avert these kinds of closures that we have been experiencing. Mr. Speaker, we are making progress. Over the last 6 months, we've seen a 40% reduction across the province in emergency room diversions. We still have an incredible amount of work to do. We still have an incredible amount of work to do, and I am deeply committed to doing that work with health authorities, with the healthcare workforce, and with the member opposite as we do everything we can to make sure that healthcare is there for people when they need it.
Member for Columbia River Revelstoke.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This government has had 18 months to design a framework for staking mineral claims, which must include First Nations consultation. Only within the last few days have they released a draft, and surprise, neither First Nations nor industry are happy with what they see. Mr. Speaker, why is this government so laser focused on destroying mining in British Columbia?
Minister of Mining and Critical Minerals.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Thanks to the member for the question. Honourable Speaker, we are fully committed to supporting a responsible, competitive and strong mining sector that provides jobs to the people of British Columbia across the province, Mr. Speaker, and provides minerals that are critical to the low-carbon economy moving forward. The mineral claims consultation framework the member is talking about was created in response of a Supreme Court ruling, Mr. Speaker. The court gave us 18 months, Mr. Speaker, to implement a new framework. And we have consulted, Mr. Speaker, First Nations, we have consulted the industry and all that, and we are going to now implement the new framework, Mr. Speaker. But let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, that we have included several of the key recommendations made by the Association of Mineral Exploration, Mr. Speaker, and we will not stop there. We will continue to listen and adopt as we move forward. This is the new framework, Mr. Speaker, that will actually sustain the mining sector in the long run, Mr. Speaker, and create more jobs for the people of British Columbia and grow our economy.
Member for Courtenay Comox.
Mr. Speaker, with ERs closed across rural BC, our broken emergency transport system is costing rural British Columbian children their lives. A critically ill infant in the East Kootenays died waiting for help. A 5-year-old suffered permanent damage, forced into emergency surgery to remove a section of their bowel because transportation was too slow and failed them. 2 avoidable tragedies. Before COVID, Alberta's STARS Air Ambulance team filled the gap in BC's broken system. Now, our system is leaving desperate parents watching the clock, praying their children survive. How can the minister defend these deadly delays, and what action will be taken now to ensure no more children pay the ultimate price for our failing rural health system?
Minister of Health.
Thank you so much, Honourable Speaker. And of course, when people call 911 in an emergency, they need to know that the service is there for them and that help is on the way quickly. That's why this government has done so much investing in rural transport, in paramedics, out in rural communities, so much more than the previous government did. Mr. Speaker, since 2017, We've seen a significant increase, Mr. Speaker, in the number of calls that are coming, and that's why we're taking action to strengthen these services. Mr. Speaker, we've added over 1,500 permanent full-time paramedics. Mr. Speaker.
Member.
We've added dozens and dozens of new ambulances, new air ambulances. We've converted 24 ambulance stations from part-time on-call to full-time on-call, Mr. Speaker. With these kinds of stations staffed around the clock, Mr. Speaker, we are able to respond faster. We're going to continue to make these kinds of investments because we know that rural communities depend on them. Thank you.
The bell ends the question period.